Hey guys, welcome to another sunny Mallorca, and I'm just outside swinging around in the hammock here. So I thought I'd do a little discussion this morning with regards to the tent I own, which is the Hubba Hubba NX, and another tent which I've really been contemplating purchasing, which gets very good reviews as well and is in wide circulation, which is the Big Agnes Tiger Wall UL2. So I really fancied getting myself a Tiger Wall 2 because of the weight saving between the Hubba Hubba NX and the advertised weight of the Tiger Wall 2. But I've been looking into it, and to be honest, I'm not sure when you actually add up all of the additions you need in addition to the tent itself, is there such a big difference in the weight? So I've obviously got the Hubba Hubba NX and I know that tent, so I can talk about that one. But the Tiger Wall 2, I can only really talk about what I've seen on the forums and what other people have said are the pros and cons to that tent. So the first comparison between the two tents is obviously the Hubba Hubba NX is completely symmetrical. It's a fully freestanding tent. It can be pitched on solid ground without pegging it out, whereas the Tiger Wall 2 is not symmetrical and it's classed as a semi-freestanding tent. So you do have to peg out the bottom end where the single pole is. Now, one of my observations of general owners' complaints about the Tiger Wall 2 is that the guys come at a fixed length, or the peg out points come at a fixed length. That would be a problem for me because the Hubba Hubba 2 has got nice thin taped webbing on the bottom, and quite often I can't get the peg in the position that I want because there's a rock underneath the surface or another obstruction. So it's really handy to use that webbing to lengthen and shorten the guy out points for the tent base and the fly. So that's one thing that I would consider to be a negative with the Big Agnes. The other point I've noticed is the Hubba Hubba has got 4 guy lines, whereas the Big Agnes has only got 3. So there's no guy out points in way of the vestibule areas. So, you know, if you've got more wind hitting the side of the tent, there isn't a guy out there to add additional stability. I noticed one owner had the tent collapse during a storm, so that may explain that, whereas the Hubba Hubba has got 4 guy out points, 1 on each end, which obviously adds to the stability. So the other thing that I like about my Hubba Hubba is the zip doors on the inner tent are continuous. So there is a continuous curvature to that zip, whereas the Big Agnes, it seems like you've got a vertical zip and a horizontal zip, and to get in and out you need to open the 2 and then fold the door back, so that wouldn't be as convenient as the Hubba Hubba zip, which is continuous. So wherever the zips are on the Hubba Hubba, you can go in one direction or the other and open the door. The other thing people have complained about with the Big Agnes is the fly, which apparently continuously fouls the zip in way of the vestibule opening. So that's another problem that I've never experienced with my MSR tent. And another major factor for me is that the Big Agnes does not come in dark olive green. I do a lot of wild camping and I don't want my tent standing out like a sore thumb. the Big Agnes in that light silver colour is obviously going to be a lot less covert than the MSR Hubba Hubba in a dark green. So once you set up your MSR Hubba Hubba in a bit of foliage, it virtually disappears. So that's one of the other considerations as to why I am going to stick with my Hubba Hubba NX is for the colour. If Big Agnes did the dark green in the copper spur, I must admit it would be a serious contender for a second tent to use as a one-man. So moving on now to the weights and specifications of the two tents. The Big Agnes Tiger Spur is made of a 15D nylon throughout. So I'm going to compare that to now the Hubba Hubba, which is made of 15D mesh, a 20D fly and a 30D floor. So with the Big Agnes, I would say undoubtedly you need to use a footprint with a 15D floor. I would have no hesitation using my Hubba Hubba without the footprint with a 30D floor. Basically I use the footprint just to keep the bottom of the tent clean, but I don't really need it. The floor is thick enough without having the additional weight of the footprint. So now to look at the advertised weights of these tents, and this is where you've got to really pay a little bit of attention. The Big Agnes is advertised at 1.130 kilos and the Hubba Hubba at 1.550 kilos. However, the Big Agnes requires 13 pegs to fully peg out the tent and the guys and to move the fly sheet at the bottom of the tent. Otherwise, apparently they leak water through when it rains. So you only get 8 pegs with the Big Agnes. So I've just weighed 5 additional pegs, and by the time you add 5 pegs to your 1130, it more or less brings the weight to 1.2 kilos. So in addition to that, as I said before, you'd most likely want to use a footprint. Now the weight of my MSR footprint is 188 grams. So by the time you add your extra pegs and your footprint onto your Big Agnes Tiger Spur, we end up with 1,398 grams. Now that compared with the Hubba Hubba at 1550, the Hubba Hubba includes all of the pegs required to fully erect the tent, which is a total of 10. You wouldn't necessarily need the footprint with the Hubba Hubba, as it's got a 30D floor opposed to the 15D floor. So in summary, there's a weight difference of around about 150 grams between the Big Agnes Copper Spur and the base weight of the Hubba Hubba without the footprint. For me, the Hubba Hubba is a legendary tested tent. The Hubba Hubba is symmetrical, it guides out in stronger positions, it's more durable. I think having calculated all of the additions that you would need to carry with the Big Agnes Tiger Spur, I'll be sticking with my Hubba Hubba. It's not until you actually sit down and work out what you actually get with the tent at that advertised weight and what you need to put to it that this ultralight phenomenon seems to just disappear. So I welcome some comments on this from you Tiger Wall 2 owners and Hubba Hubba 2 owners. but that's my view on the comparison that I've just done on the two tents. And I have found myself a Big Agnes Tiger Wall 2, which I can purchase, but to be honest, I really don't think it's worth it to have 150 grams less, but a far less durable, less stable tent than the Hubba Hubba. So if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll welcome some comments from you guys who've got these two tents. Stay safe. Cheers.